Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Triple X, Basham Reynolds, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, and Hilton Garden Inn. And I want to recognize also one of our frequent viewers, Chris Klink, good friend of mine, who is a big-time Boilermaker fan and was in attendance. His health is getting better after some recent medical issues, and was at the Purdue Indiana game, and I've been guessing, I know he's going to be there on Sunday as Purdue takes on Michigan State. So always appreciate the fact he watches and his funny commentary that he and I share from time to time. Brian, obviously you had a chance to go down and talk to the guys and to Coach Matt Painter. Maybe the same old, same old. This is not going to be a same old game, as you know, and you look at it. Anything come out of today that leads you to the trend, or what do you see are some of the things that Purdue just simply has to do to be successful?
Well, I think first and foremost, obviously, you need your best player to not have the worst game of his season, of his career. Obviously, that was not Carson Edwards' night.
Yeah.
But I think he compounded his problems a little bit by getting a little over-aggressive at times and kind of played right into Michigan State's hands. And what Michigan State's going to do is they're going to be really physical. They're going to try to run every chance they get. And Purdue has to be smart on offense. They got to take good shots. They have to not turn the ball over, and they have to survive on the glass against those waves of 22-year-old barrel-chested, super aggressive big men.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. It comes down to who's tougher. It comes down to who's smarter. That's pretty much basketball, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who's tougher, who's smarter, chances are is going to win more often than not. But all of those things are amplified against Michigan State, this particular Michigan State team.
Yeah, Matt Painter has said, without me not making excuses, but this is a tough matchup for the way Purdue sets up, maybe more of the way Purdue set up as we looked at it on January 7th versus January, whatever it's going to be, on January the 27th. Travion Williams, I'm making a reference. If you're Tom Izzo, what do you do to, you've now know this guy, who this guy is. He had 13 and 12 against you first time. How do you view that matchup, and what do you think Izzo will do?
Michigan State is not going to be surprised by Travion Williams this time. They probably were to a certain extent in the first game. Don't think for a second, too, that Michigan State isn't going to bend over backwards to stop the player that makes them look bad, too, because this is a player from Detroit who checks every box of your prototypical Michigan State player profile. That guy Travion Williams you could not engineer a player better for Michigan State than him. He's got the body, he's got the physicality, all of it. Yeah. And he is not at Michigan State. And that makes Michigan State not look so good. I know Michigan State doesn't need necessarily everything to fall in their favor. They have a lot going for them with all the Final Fours and championships and whatnot. But that's not something that probably they're thrilled about.
Yeah.
So they are not going to want to be made to look bad again by Travion Williams. Obviously, Michigan State won that game the first time around, so they didn't look bad. But I'm sure they got a lot of questions afterwards about why isn't Travion Williams at Michigan State. And I think they're going to be a little extra motivated to put together a pretty good game plan for Travion Williams. So he needs to be ready for anything. He needs to be ready for doubles. He needs to be ready to get kneed in the stomach if it comes to that. Whatever Michigan State has to do to slow him down, stop him, whatever it may be, they are going to do it.
Nick Ward wouldn't do that. No, I mean they have a lot of physicality, obviously, and Michigan State can run it at you at waves, and it's not. And yet you look at Michigan State, and you've watched them more closely than just about anybody. This is not a team with great individual players. I mean, Cassius Winston's been phenomenal at point guard, but do you buy that, or do you think that they have that star that can lead them deep into the tournament, or is this just a good, maybe as balanced a Michigan State team as we've seen?
They are a great example of the value of experience and the value of culture and identity in college basketball, because this is a program that normally has a first-round pick or two on its roster.
Yeah.
Last year they had 2 lottery picks.
Yeah.
Roughly lottery picks.
Yeah.
I can't remember where exactly Miles Bridges went. But what they have right now is they have no first-round draft picks on their team, most likely. They have really, really good players who are probably going to be second-round draft picks or overseas pros. They do not have those supreme physical talents they've normally had. Cassius Winston and Nick Ward are 2 first-team All-Big Ten type of guys. They're experienced. They've stayed in the program for 2.5 years now.
Right.
So they know the deal. They also have guys who have bought into roles, who have bought into what Michigan State traditionally is. Kenny Goins, Xavier Tillman come to mind. Those are kind of your consummate Michigan State elite role player types. Matt McQuaid is another great example. They have these guys where they have been this great convergence of recruiting supreme talent and keeping it in the program, which Cassius Winston and Nick Ward were coming out of high school, but also surrounding them with elite role players who are the epitome of what Michigan State basketball has been in terms of its toughness, its physicality, its aggressiveness on offense, all of that stuff. They're a great example of how you don't have to have NBA first-round talent to have a great college team.
That's true.
Now, we'll see what happens when they get to the NCAA tournament, when all of a sudden you run into first-round picks left and right. That's been sort of that glass ceiling Purdue has run into numerous times in March. But for right now, Michigan State has basically the consummate Michigan State team, and they've done it without consummate Michigan State talent.
I have, and this is a personal problem, I called him Chuck McQuaid. Who is Chuck McQuaid? I don't know, Brian's, I'm asking, was he like a TV star this morning? On a Golden Black Report.
Purdue had a safety.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah.
Chuck McQuaid.
A short-lived football player, Chuck McQuaid.
That's what happens.
Charles McQuaid.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I think that's who it was. I apologize to Matt and to Chuck or Charles.
There's a lot worse things you could call them.
I know, but I have these senior moments from time to time. You look at Purdue's guard play or that extra person that's going to. I mean, Ryan Klein has been pretty good of late. I mean, you look for games like this when you're playing a team the caliber of Michigan State. Somebody else has to come forward that you might not expect, and I don't know if that's really possible based on how we look at Purdue's roster. But you see anybody out there that you say, boy, if this guy has a big game, Purdue can deliver itself to a big win on Sunday.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know if anybody else matters if Carson Edwards doesn't play well.
Yeah.
And Purdue in reality had no chance in East Lansing because of the way Michigan State was able to slow down Carson Edwards and the way that parlayed itself into Carson Edwards falling into some of his trappings that he will every now and then. Carson Edwards, obviously, aggressiveness has made him a great player, a great scorer. That is what he is. That is his defining characteristic. It's what has made him great. But there is another sharp edge to that sword, and that is that over-aggressiveness he sometimes falls into, that occasional lack of situational awareness, that penchant at times for making things a little bit worse on himself by overcomplicating things, somewhat trying to make a play that's not there to be made. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the good stuff without taking the trappings of aggressiveness. Michigan State the last time really teed off on him, really defended him well, really was aggressive with him, and forced him down sort of that rabbit hole. Now, when you look at the way Carson Edwards has played ever since then, yes, there have been some particularly ambitious offensive moments, as there are always going to be, but you've also seen assist numbers going through the roof. You've also seen anecdotal evidence left and right of him making better, sounder, simpler basketball plays. He looks like a player who trusts his supporting cast more than he did several weeks ago.
Yeah.
You see that supporting cast rewarding that trust more than ever because Purdue is making shots, Purdue is playing well offensively, and that's probably the big thing that had to fall into place for this team when you look at where they were early in the season was the cohesiveness. They looked like five guys just out there before playing noon ball together, basically, at times. Now they look like a team at both ends of the floor, and it's no coincidence that cohesiveness has led to Purdue's best basketball this season, its best sustained basketball this season, more importantly. This team has been consistent, too. And during non-conference play, they were the epitome of inconsistency. I mean, they were a completely different team from one game to another, one possession to another. And now their fortunes have been completely reversed.
Nojel Eastern obviously always has an interesting role in games just because of his ability to defend and what he will do. Where do you see, and I don't remember well enough about how they used him up in East Lansing. Was he spend more time on Winston? I don't really recall, but how do you see his role and again what he can do? Is there a way to turn his offensive ability and his struggles to some extent, or what he does well, to a positive against a team like Michigan State? Do you post him up more down? Do you try to see if he's trying to get to the rim a lot? How do you view that?
Well, Purdue is using him in a very productive role offensively. Everybody gets caught up in what he can't do.
Yeah.
People need to focus on what he can do, and what he has been doing offensively. They use him to crash the glass from the wing. They use him to put him in the corner to give him angles to get to the basket. They put him in post-up situations where he can use his body. They put him in isolation situations where guys typically can't handle him physically when he gets to the basket. There's a lot of stuff he's giving them offensively as a scorer. He is not a three-point shooter. He probably will never be a three-point shooter, at least a consistent one. I don't see any reason why he can't be a 1 or 2 a game guy when he's wide open at some stage of his career. It's not what he is right now, but they're using him in a very functional role offensively. Purdue doesn't need him to score. They need him to be a garbage man. They need him to get to the rim. They need him to be available at the rim. They need him to offensive rebound. They need him to just get a point here and there when there's a point here and there to be gotten. But the biggest thing for No Gel Eastern, obviously, the place where he changes games, obviously, is defensively. He will be on Cassius Winston from the first minute of the game to the last minute of the game. He has done an extraordinary job defensively this season on everyone he's played against. The numbers against Cassius Winston the first time around don't bear that out because he still got his 20-some points, whatever it was.
Yeah, big day.
When you itemize the offense, Cassius Winston got No Gel Eastern a couple times, but he didn't get all 20-something off of No Gel Eastern. No Gel Eastern didn't do a bad job on Cassius Winston. It was a matter of Cassius Winston got his threes off of offensive rebounds, got his threes in transition. Those do not sit in the lap of the guy primarily defending him. But the guy who primarily is defending him Sunday will have to do as good a job as anybody has this Big Ten season on him, because Cassius Winston might be the best point guard in the country. He is the guy that has made this team
Really
what it is more than anybody else.
Yeah,
we talk about their physicality. We talk about their rebounding. Very little of it matters without Cassius Winston playing at an elite level, which he has all season long.
Yeah, and you look at how Michigan State does score, and they do get those threes in transition. And if you really want to know the breakdown, one thing at least I find very instructive is reading Brian's upon further review on the site the day after. He goes back and looks at the film, and there's many things in there. He really dissects it extremely well, and in a way that you can read it and understand it, and those points well made. Not only after the Michigan State game, but you go back and read each game. It's really good stuff. All right, now you look at this game, too, in terms of Purdue's sitting well in the world of the eyes of the NCAA, and I'm not saying that has already been determined. That Purdue's playing like an NCAA tournament team, but a win Sunday will do what? It'll obviously raise that stock. Probably will get Purdue back in the top 25, obviously, if they can get the win.
Well, Purdue might be back in
Yeah.
If the Michigan State game didn't come before the polls came back out
Correct.
Monday, Purdue would probably be back in now
Right.
with another Tier 1 road win. I know the Tier 1 thing doesn't matter necessarily to AP voters, but
But people talk about it all the time. so
people
they do.
talk about it. They
Yeah,
might
so
not
you-
necessarily factor it into their votes.
Yeah.
But Purdue's won 7 of 8. They're playing great basketball right now. They're playing consistent basketball right now. Some of Purdue's hardest road trips are behind it. All of Purdue's hardest road trips are now behind it. Michigan State, Wisconsin, Ohio State. Purdue still has to go to Bloomington. Purdue
And
still has to go to Maryland.
I forgot about
Yes,
Maryland.
Purdue still has to go to some difficult places. But what I'm saying
Yeah.
is a lot of the worst is behind
Oh,
you
no
now.
doubt, yeah.
And the way you're playing, the schedule breaks now to the point where there's an opportunity here to really close this season strong. Purdue's in great shape for the NCAA tournament right now. They're in a completely different position than they were a couple weeks ago. In non-conference play, they didn't have the number of wins, and they had done nothing to show you that they could get the sorts of wins away from Mackey Arena that they were going to need to get in the tournament. Now, Purdue's last 2 road games have been against opponents that qualify as Tier 1 wins. Purdue got both of them, Wisconsin, Ohio State. That is a hell of a foundation to build a resume around when you didn't have a resume otherwise. You're well on your way to getting the win total you need. You're well on your way to getting the quality of wins you need. Michigan State on Sunday would be a centerpiece because they're obviously a top 10 team. They're going to be great in the net rankings at the end of things. The road wins matter more than the home wins. They just do. Top 75 road wins are Tier 1 wins. Obviously, road wins now have a weighted importance that way. Purdue has really helped itself with these Wisconsin and Ohio State wins. They've completely changed their outlook for the NCAA tournament. Now it's just a matter of not just falling off the face of the earth. If you continue to play well the rest of the season, you're going to get in the NCAA tournament. You just cannot just fall off a cliff here.
Yeah, you have still some, obviously some challenging road. You got to go to Minnesota, Nebraska, and
Nebraska's the one I forgot,
Maryland
yes.
as well, and Indiana. But you're right. You're absolutely right that you got a couple big ones that I wasn't sure Purdue was going to get if you were looking back at the Boilermakers through the lens of December 15th after that loss to Notre Dame down at the Crossroads. All right, these kind of weekends showcase. You're going to have the 15,000 T-shirts, and the arena's going to be in rare form. Recruiting comes into this both from an atmosphere standpoint for football and for basketball to some extent, because this is Purdue on a cold Sunday afternoon when there isn't all that much sports on television, but there are also going to be some people there. Tell me what that's important in terms of this program. Both programs, not just men's basketball.
From an environmental standpoint, Sunday is the best Purdue has to offer. Indiana is always different. But Sunday is going to be the best Purdue has to offer. It's a Sunday. It's an afternoon game, right?
Right, 1 o'clock.
Right.
CBS.
The place is going to be packed. The place is going to be on national television. It is going to be, insane in there. The more basketball recruits you can get to experience that, the more they might want to be a part of it. The more football recruits you can get there, obviously there's a disconnect between sports there, but it reflects well on your university. It reflects well on your sports culture. It's a visceral, positive experience, and that stuff matters in recruiting. It's like fishing, the shiniest thing, the thing that attracts people's impulses. Oftentimes, that's going to go a long way in catching that fish. And again, Sunday is the very best Purdue from an athletic department standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. It's the best they have to offer. These sorts of days cannot be overstated in recruiting and their value, especially if you win the game. If you don't win the game, it doesn't matter all that much, because they've experienced the process. The outcome certainly would help.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, everybody's going to be focusing on that on Sunday afternoon, and that will be it has all the makings of a classic in Mackey Arena as Purdue takes on Michigan State. Okay, we will be back next week. Justin Lovett, we're going to start, I believe, at 3 o'clock next week. Justin Lovett will be one of our guests, and Brian and Tom will also be in studio as we get ready for, we'll probably talk about Purdue Penn State the night before as well, but also Purdue will be taking on Minnesota on Super Bowl Sunday at noon in Mackey Arena as well. And that will be all Big Ten games this year, no walks in the park, so to speak. We want to thank our sponsors, Hilton Garden Inn, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, John Basham and folks at Basham Rental, and of course, XXX on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. I want to thank Brad Kearns and Gordon, Brad, all the hundreds of photos it seemed I've sent you today. Appreciate all your efforts, and Chris Collar and everybody else at WLFI that helped make this happen. And of course, my colleague Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart and Rick Mount. If you missed that, really interesting. Rick is not shy in saying what he thinks. If you missed that, we'll have the replay up here in about an hour or so. It's worth a listen to see he kind of evaluates all the Purdue shooters. He does know a thing or two about shooting. So we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Stay warm. If you're coming to Mackey Arena on Sunday, safe trip down here, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Gold and Black Live next Friday, 3 p.m. start time. Special start time for our February 1st edition of this program. Have a great week, everybody, and thank you.